I've parked outside my friend's house. He lives on the top floor. It's a bit windy today. Oh. And this house is actually considered a cool house. I'll show you the entrance. The entrance looks like it should be something from a nightclub. Look at this. How weird is that? And they've just had a new playground put in. Although I won't be playing on the playground. So it says the car park is only for people who are like essentially working here. I wonder if anyone ever gets fined. So the title of today's video is, if the UK is so wealthy, why is everyone there so unhappy? I often speak to my friends who are living there at the moment, and they say, oh, the UK has changed, it has changed so much. Now, I've been living in Russia for about 20 years, but I obviously lived 25 years in the UK. And so I know exactly what the UK is all about and what it was like when I lived there. But things have completely changed, and through speaking to my friends and my family and speaking to a lot of my subscribers who live in the UK, I'm able to see the problems that the UK has, because I can compare it to life here. Now obviously in the UK people are a lot more wealthy generally, but what is wealth? Wealth is what the minimum wage in the UK is better than the minimum wage in Russia. Yes, that's completely true, it is. However, the cost of living in the UK is insane, and so yes, people may earn a good minimum wage, but does a good minimum wage help people to actually live better? I don't think so. The wages generally in Russia are lower. However, the cost of living is much lower too. Now this video isn't a video comparing Russia and the UK. However, because I live in Russia and I've lived in the UK, obviously there's going to be lots of comparisons. In Russia we've got lots of houses like this one here, and they're next door to houses like these ones here. I think one of the saddest things about life in the UK is that people genuinely do not believe that the government can change the situation. They do not believe that the cost of living is going to get easier. They do not believe and do not have confidence that the leadership of the UK will change things. In fact, they believe that things are going to get worse and worse and worse. And that's such a tragedy when you know that your country is in a bad way, but you can't see that it can get any better. And I've noticed in the UK, right, you guys always talk about, you know, in the UK we have the ability to change our president as we do in Russia, but we're not going to talk about that today. I'm talking specifically about the UK today because I'm a British citizen, I've lived in the UK. So the British people, even though you guys vote and change your prime minister every couple of years because, you know, there'll be one scandal, one premier minister or prime minister changes, and then that one you won't be happy with, you'll change another one, and each time you're like, yeah, got to get rid of that old one, got to get this new one in, he's going to change everything. And then 6 months down the line, it's all about how that prime minister is crap, Britain's not going to change under him, it's all his fault. Well, look, this guy's been in power for a year, right? Britain's been going downhill for ages and nothing seems to be changing it. And I think that is the biggest tragedy, that you guys can't see any changes are going to happen. You can hope for change, but you can't see any kind of imminent change or any belief that things are going to get better. And so, yes, Britain might be wealthier than Russia, but the British people are poor, fed up and angry that things are just getting worse and worse. So why is this the way it is? Why is the situation in the UK getting worse and worse? Well, in my view, woke culture and political correctness has spiraled out of control and become its own monster. And the political correctness is preventing any leaders from making any drastic changes, because there's huge decisions that are needed to be made in the UK. The main problems that people have are with the woke culture, with immigration, with money being spent left and right and centre, but the cost of living going up. There's big problems, but it's very difficult for somebody in power in the UK to make a difficult decision, because there's always going to be people that are going to call him out. And so if you say, for example, right, in the UK we have a problem with immigration that needs to be resolved, what is going to happen? He's going to get called out by the media and by so many people as a racist, and so he can't make a decision about the immigration problem, because if he does, then he's labelled. He'll lose his job, he'll be forever labelled as a racist, and there's nothing he can do. And so woke culture has really prevented people from making these big decisions. This is interesting, right? A new one. And it's such a shame, because woke culture and the whole political correctness was implemented to make it so that it was fair for everyone. But now what it's done is it's given so many people a voice that no matter what you do, you're going to offend someone. And so, like Bart Simpson used to say, you're damned if you do and you're damned if you don't. And that's kind of how it is in the UK. You've got to be popular, but if people make difficult decisions, rarely are they popular, right? So what do? In Britain's case, nothing. We've got a plastic swan hanging up in a basket. Is that nice or what? I don't know. You let me know what you think. One of the craziest things about the problem in the UK is that the mainstream media deny that any problems exist. And that's pretty shocking. You can see the frustration building up on the people's faces. You can see all the internet memes and video clips of things that British people are not happy with. And people send them to each other all around the world about loads of crazy things that are going on inside the UK that they are not happy with. But whenever it gets to a point where it boils over and it gets to the news, well, the news simply say that this is an isolated few, that generally the UK does not feel like this, and that these people are either racist or anti whatever it is that they're against. They're labelled immediately. Fascist is another one that the media love to label. The media loves to label Russia as fascists, or in the past when Russia and Ukraine were friends, they'd label Ukraine as fascists. And fascist is obviously a horrible label. And those who have been labelled as a fascist, for example, well, they're never going to get the top job, are they? So they're never really going to have an impact on what happens in the UK. They're never going to be able to change anything. And that really is a shame. When I watch these news reports and my friends say, watch this, and I know what my friends think, and all my friends literally in the UK are second or third generation immigrants. Their parents or grandparents moved to the UK, and they were so proud about how their families moved to the UK and assimilated into society. They wanted to be accepted. Yes, life was difficult for them. Yes, they didn't have woke culture, and they, received lots of racism and lots of problems. And that is something that woke culture has, I guess, helped, right? So that people don't receive racism, so they receive fairness in society. But when you see things going on in the news right now, like a two-tier policing and a two-tier law system, well, hang on a second, it's come full circle now, hasn't it? And the media act like there's nothing wrong with this at all. Aww. So the next point is something that happens to so many empires and so many countries, and it makes them bankrupt. This happened to the Soviet Union. The Soviet Union was so I guess, concerned about implementing world communism, that they spent loads of money on everything but themselves. And this is happening in the UK. People get really frustrated because they see that the government can find money for certain things, but they can't find money to help the citizens of the country. And this makes people that are living in difficult situations who are born in the UK very, very angry and frustrated, because they see that they're living in a difficult time, right? They're living in a situation where they haven't got money, where the quality of living is not good, where the infrastructure and the housing is deteriorating. And at the same time they say, well, hang on a second, why does the British government have money to help other people, to help people that are coming to the UK, to help other countries that are at war, that have got nothing to do with the UK? How is it that the British government can find money to help these people in these situations, but they can't find money to help us, the people? Now, this is obviously a tricky one, because who the hell am I to say who deserves free money from the government? Yes, there's wars going on around the world, and every country does what it thinks is best for its country, and the British government does that. But if you're a British citizen, you probably think, well, why are they getting money? Why are they getting housing? Why are we sending money over there to do that when the NHS is crumbling? When, you know, we haven't got houses for ourselves, when we can't afford to live? Why is the British government finding money for them? And so this is a really difficult one. But at the same time, what is the job or the role of the British government? Is it to help other people and other countries, or is it to help Britain and British citizens? Surely the first thing and the first people that the British government should be helping is British people and Britain, because British people and Britain live and are citizens of the UK. They work there, they pay tax there, and surely the first people that should be helped are the British people. But the British people seem to be the last. And so if you're a British person, you're struggling, and you see that other people seem to be getting a lot more than you, then it can be very frustrating. Now, in the UK, there are so many rules. So many rules. It's the country of rules. And rules are there to make things easier, to make things better, to make things, I guess, fairer. But there's now so many rules, things you can and can't do. And I always bring up the same example, and that is of somebody I know who wanted to film their daughter in a school play. She's like 8 years old, and they were not allowed to film, right? They were not allowed to film them because some of the parents objected to the filming of children in a school play. And I think, wow, that's insane, right? What's going on there? Realistically, are paedophiles gonna watch a video of a leaked school play footage and, you know, and enjoy themselves with it? That's just crazy. It's got to that level where when parents are objecting that you cannot film kids in a school play, and how tragic is that, that in 20-30 years time that girl won't be able to look and say, oh wow, this is my school play that my parents filmed. In fact, not even video. The parents are not even allowed to take photos during the school play because other kids might end up in the photo. And I wonder, does that mean that they have class photos these days? Or do they not have class photos anymore? What about if you've got a sports team, right? At the beginning of the season, do the football players line up and have a team photo? Or are they not allowed to do that anymore in case some people complain? Another one that I saw a news headline about was a primary school in the UK who decided, blimey these dogs, a primary school who decided to cancel the Easter bonnet festival that they typically have at the school, and instead during Easter to have a refugee week so that it'll include everybody. But surely the refugee week wouldn't include everybody, because that would then exclude the non-refugees, right? But it's okay to cancel the Easter bonnet because the refugees might be kind of unhappy with it because it's a British festival, but it's okay to have a refugee week. Now, I don't think there's anything wrong with having a refugee week, but I don't think they should cancel the Easter bonnet either. Personally, living in Russia, I follow the Russian traditions. I cannot imagine Russia, anywhere in Russia, cancelling Russian traditions because foreigners might not be happy. That could never happen. This is the funniest basketball court ever because there's no concrete. Isn't that just a bit mad? How do you bounce the ball? The next point is about government and social institutions which are being stretched to the limit. Britain loves to talk about the NHS, the mighty NHS, and we all know the state of the NHS right now. The queues, the chaos, it's insane. What a lot of people in the UK are not taught is that free healthcare exists in lots of places like Russia, and we don't have that chaos. Now, what's the reason for the chaos with the NHS? I guess a combination of money, qualified people to work there, and too many people for the infrastructure, and the system simply can't cope. So look here, we've got the first few numbers and then the last few numbers. And then the final point for today's video is the cost of housing. The cost of housing in the UK is insane. It's ridiculous. It doesn't cost that much for land, for cement, for bricks. It's insane. I know the real price of these things because I live in Russia. Now, why would it be so much cheaper in Russia for the same materials? It doesn't make sense. People in the UK are being ripped off when it comes to housing. It's just completely insane. And it's unrealistic for most people to get on the housing ladder. And that's the tragedy. In the past, I mean, my parents bought their house, a 4-bedroomed, I think even a 5-bedroomed detached house. It cost something like £30,000, and this was mid-80s. Imagine that. Now obviously the salaries were less, but the percentage difference between what the salaries are like now and houses like that is unrealistic for anyone who's got a standard typical job to be able to afford a house like that. And it's such a tragedy. It really is. Now, I'm not saying these things out of hate. I'm saying these things because it saddens me, because I want things to change, because I want things to get better. But how are things going to get better? I can't see that things are going to get better. What are we going to say? Are we going to say that the current Prime Minister isn't good enough, he doesn't have the balls, and we need to get a new one? Do you really think that the new one, the next one, whoever that will be, is going to be any different? They can't make those difficult decisions, not until at least the media gets on board. Because if the media deny that there's a problem, and if the politicians deny that there's a problem simply out of fear, and that fear is that they'll get cancelled, and of course, why do they need to even talk about it, right? They're on good salaries. Let's face it, they live in the suburbs, they're on good salaries. They don't see the issues that face them. And so they're insulated from the problem. And I can't see how the UK changes. I cannot see it. Let me know what you think in the comments. I'll be really, interested to learn your opinion. Thanks a lot for today's video. Next video is going to be back to Russia again.